Hello, and welcome to Greensocks 10-man Alysrazor guide. In this guide, I will be discussing the strategy used by our guild Carpe Noctem to defeat this encounter. In our raid, we use 2 tanks, 3 healers, and 5 DPS. It might also work to use 2 healers, as the healing is not too intense until the final part of this fight. This fight consists of 4 phases, which I will discuss in detail, one at a time. When Alysrazor begins the fight, she's going to knock everyone in the raid back, doing an AoE damage to each player. At this point, we split our raid into 2 groups, one on each side. This is because Alysrazor will then proceed to fly down the center of the room doing a cleave attack. A very important thing to note at this point is that you need an interrupter on both sides of the room. As Alysrazor flies down the center of the room, she will drop feathers in her wake. Collecting 3 of these feathers will fill your Icarus bar and give you a massive speed increase and jet you straight up into the air. You're going to want one of your DPS to begin the fight by doing this and starting to DPS the boss. I'll discuss this more later. During phase 1, blazing initiates will spawn. These initiates have 2 abilities, Brushfire and Pyroblast. Pyroblast will do damage to the player the initiate is targeting. It is interruptible, and this is why we keep an interrupter on both sides of the room. Brushfire will create a patch of fire on the ground that will move in a straight line towards the player targeted. This isn't interruptible, but it can be avoided. Another thing to watch out for in this phase are the worms that are going to spawn in the center of the room in a square pattern. These are going to breathe fire constantly and spin in circles. The only members of your raid taking damage during phase 1 should be the tanks, and the reason they're taking damage is because 2 eggs are going to drop from the sky. From these eggs, hatchlings are going to spawn. These hatchlings will fixate on the nearest player and only attack them. This fixate is also going to give that player a 1000% damage increase to the hatchling. It is very important that your tanks are the ones who get this fixate. These birds do a cleave-like ability called Gushing Wounds, which applies a debuff to anyone hit by it. This debuff will bring a player down to 50% health by doing damage every 0.2 seconds. It will not go away until the player reaches 50% health or 1 minute has passed. Healers should not waste mana healing the tanks up before the 50% mark has been reached. The birds also have a mechanic that will cause them to be hungry or satiated. When the bird is hungry, every swing it has a chance to throw a tantrum. This tantrum will do massive amounts of damage. To get the hatchling back to a state of satiated, the tanks are going to have to feed it one of the worms that are spinning in the middle of the room. To do this, simply kite the bird over the worm and it will eat it. Let's return to the player who's going to be doing the flying during this phase. To begin the flying, you're going to have to gather 3 feathers that Alysrazor has dropped on the ground. Upon grabbing the 3rd feather, you'll be launched straight up into the air. You'll be able to cast while you're flying, and you'll be able to move very quickly. As you're flying, you're going to have to follow the boss and fly through rings that she will spawn. They will spawn behind her in a random spot, and they only last for 3 seconds. As you're flying through the rings, you're also going to have to dodge something called incendiary clouds. These will do massive amounts of damage to you. Every time you fly through a ring, you will gain a buff that will give you 8% haste. Gaining 25 of these buffs is going to give you another buff that will give you 75% crit for 40 seconds. If you miss too many rings in a row, you will be dropped from the sky. It is also important to note that when phase 2 begins, you're going to be dropped from the sky. If you don't have a way to slow your fall, you're going to need somebody else to do this for you, or you have to get close to the ground before the phase starts. When phase 2 starts, 3 things are going to happen. You're going to have to move in from the outside of the room because of Alysrazor's Harsh Winds ability, which is going to do damage to anyone who's too far away from her. You're also going to have to move in from the center of the room because she will spawn a massive vortex there. And tornadoes are going to spawn, which you're going to have to dodge. It's really important that when you begin phase 2, the hatchlings are dead. If they're not dead, the tanks are going to have to tank them during this phase, and they're going to do their cleave ability, and it's probably going to cause death. So yeah, make sure those are dead. Now, during this phase, we found it made it a lot easier if all the raid members stacked up so that we could move together and it would facilitate healing. And doing this, we were able to call the movements to dodge the tornadoes, and that helped a lot. During this phase, the DPS that was doing the flying during phase 1 has a different role than everyone else. They need to dash around the room and continue to go through rings while they're dodging the tornadoes. They still have their speed increased, so this is possible. Hopefully this DPS will be able to get up to 25 stacks during this time, so that they'll have 75% crit during the next phase. Phase 3 begins when the vortexes go away and the boss is lying in the center of the room. At this point you will see 2 blazing claw talon shapers spawn, and they are going to try and re-energize the boss. What you need to do is set your tanks on these and interrupt and stun them as much as possible. If your healers have enough mana during this time, they can help CC these claw shapers. Otherwise, doing any damage spell to the boss is going to restore 10% mana, and this is a great time to restore mana because there is not much damage going out. Phase 4 begins when the boss's molten power reaches 50%. At this point she will fly into the air, just above the ground, and she will need to be tanked. During this, the boss is going to do an ability called Blazing Claw. This is going to do massive amounts of damage to the tank and stack a buff that will increase damage by 10% taken. It is important that your tanks are able to swap during this. When Alysrazor reaches 100 molten power, she's going to do an AoE knockback to the entire raid, doing massive damage to each member. At this point, the fight simply restarts. From here on out, it's a simple rinse and repeat until you get the boss very low, at which point she will remain grounded and continue to attack the tank. This is the healing intensive part of this fight, and acts as a mini enrage. That concludes the guide for Alysrazor. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe to my channel. Have fun and good luck.
Should be done. This style is identical to none. Some try to make it sound like this, but you're getting me so upset that I'm wet cause you're sweating me. I start to think and then I sink into the paper like I was ink. When I'm writing, I'm trapped in between the line. I escape when I finish the rhyme. I got soul. Time keeps on slipping into the future. Slipping into the future. Time keeps on slipping into the future. Time keeps on slipping into the future. Think about it, wait, erase your rhyme, forget it, and don't waste your time, cause I'll be in the crowd if you ain't controlling it. Drop the mic, you shouldn't be holding it. If you ain't got it, I'ma make an encore. Take the mic, make the people respond for the all, cause that's the way it'll have to be if you wanna get on after me. Into the future.
Like a pro, bring it back, that's what's up.
Wow.